At the beginning of the story, in the middle of a forest in the Middle East, introduced to a special agent named Masud Rana who is preparing to carry out his mission. There are told that Rana is the best special agent from Bangladesh who is highly respected. Rana also has a nickname, Mr. Nine. Currently, Rana is ordered by his superiors to free one person who is being held hostage by a mafia group from America. Although only alone, without hesitation, Rana went to the headquarters of the mafia group, and in there Rana attacking all enemies. After successfully eliminating the guards outside, Rana immediately went inside to slaughter the other guards. Scene then moved to the upper room. Here seen that the mafia boss contacting Rana's boss. The mafia boss mocked Rana's boss by saying that Rana was just a kid, so it wouldn't be possible to face the mafia boss's men. But the fact is that Rana continued to be brutal, and he almost managed to flatten all of the mafia boss's men. Realizing this, the mafia boss immediately ordered his right-hand man to finish off the hostage. After that, the right-hand man blew up the headquarters with a time bomb. A few minutes later, it showed Rana who was still brutalizing the rest of mafia boss's men. Until after successfully eliminating them, Rana immediately went to the hostage room to take him away. But unfortunately, the hostage was already dead, but Rana will still take him. When Rana had managed to get out, the headquarters exploded because it had previously been fitted with a bomb by the mafia boss's right-hand man. 1 week later, the scene moves to Las Vegas. Here introduced to a man named Roman Ross. Roman Ross is seen to be very respected because he is the head of the biggest mafia, who is the older brother of the mafia boss, who was previously hunted by Rana in Middle East. Not long after, Roman Ross approached his younger brother, and he was named Richie Ross. Then, this Roman Ross and Richie are big mafia who sell illegal weapons to the Middle East. Even now, the two of them are assembling high-tech weapons, and if it is successfully made, then the Third World War will definitely happen. On the other hand, we will be introduced to the CIA chief named Paul Taylor and his deputy named Duke. They are having an important meeting, which is discussing how to catch Roman Ross and stopping the manufacture of his high-tech weapons. After meeting for a long time, Paul and Duke asked their men to immediately get detailed information about Roman Ross and his brother Richie. In the afternoon, it shows a man who is accompanied by 3 women. It turns out that this man is Roman Ross's former right-hand man who decided to retire. It wasn't long before the man came out to pick up the phone, but there were already Paul and Duke who were intent on arresting the man. As a result, there was a chase between the 3 of them. In short, Duke could corner the man who ran to the roof of the balcony. Here Duke asked the man not to resist, and he promised to let him go if the man would give information about Roman Ross. However, the man resisted, until there was a fistfight. In the end, Duke accidentally had to knock the man down. This left the man dead, even though this man was the only person who could provide detailed information about Roman Ross and Richie. At the same time, Paul said that now there was only one way to stop Roman Ross, that is by asking Rana, the special agent from Bangladesh, for help. Moreover, Rana already has experience hunting Richie at the beginning of the story. On the next day, the scene moves to Rana, who is now on a pilgrimage at the graves of his parents. Not long after, he gets a message from his boss asking Rana to immediately come to the Bangladeshi special agent office. A few minutes later, Rana arrived at the office, and there was Paul waiting for him. The boss immediately introduced Rana to Paul and said that Paul was the head of the CIA who needed Rana's help. Then Paul explained that he was targeting a mafia boss named Roman Ross and Richie, his younger brother. They are both known to be assembling high-tech weapons, and if it is successfully made, then the Third World War will begin soon. Meanwhile, Paul came here to invite Rana to work together in catching Roman Ross and Richie. Paul really believes in Rana because he has often heard news about Rana's greatness. Moreover, Rana had slaughtered dozens of Richie's men. Hearing this, without thinking, Rana agreed to Paul's request as long as it was with the approval of his superiors. For the sake of world security, the boss allowed it, but on condition that Rana had returned to Bangladesh and not stay in America. In the end, Rana was immediately taken away by Paul. then shows Paul taking Rana using the sea route. There was also Duke, who immediately got acquainted with Rana. Then Duke explained that in his mission, Rana would be paired with a woman named Devi, who was a secret agent from Pakistan. They can start their mission tomorrow night by pretending to take part in an antique auction that will be organized by Roman Ross. It turns out that all this time Roman Ross has always covered up his crimes by pretending to be a collector of antiques, then auctioned to rich people. Long story short, Rana arrived in America, and he is immediately escorted to his safe house by two of Paul's men. The next day shows Rana picking up Devi, the Pakistani secret agent, at an airport. It seems that Devi also understands that she will be picked up by Rana because previously Duke had told Devi. In the evening, Rana and Devi immediately attended an antique auction held by Roman Ross. They both disguised themselves as couple so as not to be suspected by Roman Ross's men. Not long after, Roman Ross arrived and immediately gave a speech to all his audiences who were present. In short, the auction is over, and now Rana will start his mission by sneaking secretly into Roman Ross's room. But unfortunately, he was caught by one of the guards, then shot from behind. After that, Rana was brought to Roman Ross and immediately injected with a liquid that made Rana unconscious. In the next scene, Rana just woke up and he was already tied on a chair. Seen there, Devi also was caught too. Then Roman Ross asked his lover to interrogate Devi outside. Meanwhile, Roman Ross himself will interrogate Rana. Then Roman Ross kept asking who was the person had sent Rana. However, Rana didn't want to open his mouth, which made Roman Ross angry. On the other hand, seen Devi beating up Roman Ross' girlfriend and a guard outside. At the same time, Rana is also seen who can untie his hands, then escapes downstairs. Then Rana immediately stole a motorbike, and fortunately Devi was also there, until he immediately got on the motorbike. In the end, Rana and Devi could escape from that place. In the afternoon, Rana and Devi arrived at their safe house. Rana kept thinking about how they could catch Roman Ross and Richie, his brother, before their high-tech weapon was successfully made. At the same time, it turned out that the safe house had been discovered by Roman Ross's men, because the motorbike that Rana had stolen had been fitted with GPS. Roman Ross's men quickly entered the yard. However, one of them stepped on a mine bomb that was previously installed by Rana. As a result of the explosion, Rana realized that an intruder was coming, so he immediately got ready with Devi. And there was a shootout. In the midst of battle, Rana had to duel with one of Roman Ross's tall men. Until after dueling for a long time, in the end Rana could finish off the person. Not long after, an enemy sniper was seen aiming at Rana, but suddenly the person was shot from behind. It turned out to be a shot from the Duke. After successfully eliminating all of Roman Ross' men, Rana, Devi, Paul, and Duke immediately reorganized their next strategy. Here Devi explains if she had heard Roman Ross's conversation when she was caught yesterday. In his conversation, Roman Ross will hold an important meeting tomorrow night at one of the casinos with people who will fund the manufacture of high-tech weapons. Devi knew the location, so they could ambush him there. Duke and Paul agree to Devi's plan, so tomorrow night they will all prepare to carry out their mission. The next day, seen Roman Ross chatting with his only son, Jason. Jason, who feels that he has grown up, asks Roman Ross to let him have an important meeting tonight. At first, Roman Ross refused because it was a very important meeting. But Jason continued to plead while saying that he was the future successor to Roman Ross, who had to understand all of his father's business. In the end, Roman Ross allows Jason, but he will still be accompanied by Richie, the uncle. Roman Ross also sent his right-hand man, along with some of his troops to accompany Jason. In short, it showed Richie, Jason, and some of his bodyguards already at the casino. However, they don't realize that Rana and Devi are already there, disguised as dancers. Not long after, Jason began the important meeting with a man from Russia. But when the man wanted to give a suitcase of money, Rana suddenly became brutalized. Until there was a shootout, Duke and Paul were also there to help. In the middle of the battle, Rana could shoot Jason, Roman Ross' son, making him unconscious. Then Richie, he chose to escape from the casino. The right-hand man, who saw Jason was badly injured, he immediately took Jason away in his car. Then they were followed by Rana, until there was a chase action. Meanwhile, for Duke, Paul, and Devi, they are still in a shootout with Roman Ross's guards, who's sent to protect Jason. In the midst of battle, Duke had to duel with one of Roman Ross's men, who was a martial arts expert. But fortunately, Duke was more skilled and eventually defeated the person. After successfully defeated Roman Ross's men in the casino, now only Roman Ross's helpless girlfriend left there. Here Duke promised not to finish her off and only arrest Roman Ross's girlfriend, as long as she would tell him who the person was had assembled the high-tech weapon and where it was made. Because she didn't want to die in vain, in the end the girlfriend told him everything. The scene moves to Rana, who is still chasing Jason and Roman Ross's right-hand man. Jason, who was previously very badly injured, eventually died in the car, while Rana, who was still chasing, had to fail because he was trapped by a train. A few minutes later, the right-hand man brought Jason's body to Roman Ross. Here, Roman Ross can only cry and ask who is the person killed his son. The right-hand man replied that the person was Rana, the person they had previously arrested. Hearing this, Roman Ross vowed to avenge what Rana had done. Then the right-hand man also explained that none of his men who went to the casino survived, except Richie, Roman Ross' younger brother, who ran away somewhere. Then Roman Ross asked the right-hand man to stay focused on their plan, making high-tech weapons, while he himself will clean up all the mess. The next day showed Rana just getting information about the person who had assembled a high-tech weapon for Roman Ross. It turned out that the person was a professor from Bangladesh, whose headquarters were in the dam. Without waiting long, Rana immediately went to meet the professor. Once there, Rana tried to talk nicely about why the professor wanted to assemble a high-tech weapon for Roman Ross. The professor replied that he was only working because Roman Ross wanted to pay him very expensive. Then Rana asked the professor to show him where he kept the weapon. In the end, the professor wanted to take Rana to the place where the weapon was stored in his lab. But the location of the lab was in the middle of the desert, so they had to use a car to reach there. When Rana and the professor went to enter the lab, they were suddenly held at gunpoint by Roman Ross's men, then taken inside. Then they were both taken into a room that was connected to Roman Ross via video call. At the same time, Roman Ross's right-hand man arrived while carrying Devi, whom he had caught. Through the video call, Roman Ross said that now is the time to take revenge for his son's death. Roman Ross also doesn't understand why Rana dared to interfere with his business, even though he doesn't know Rana at all. Apparently, Roman Ross didn't know that Rana and Devi were special agents sent by Paul and Duke, the head of the CIA. Not long after, the professor suddenly killed one of his colleagues who didn't want to side with Roman Ross. It turns out that the professor wants to assemble this high-tech weapon, not because he is paid expensive, but because of his own desire to take the world economy down. That's why he was willing to join Roman Ross, because he felt that only Roman Ross had same vision with him. Here, Rana said that even though he and Devi had to die now, the CIA and the American military would soon come. At the same time, sure enough, Duke and the team have entered secretly while eliminating one by one the guards outside. Meanwhile, Paul was tasked with assisting Duke from afar by utilizing satellite signals. Back to the professor, who frantically went into hiding when he heard the security alarm sound. As for Rana and Devi, they are taken to another room by a guard, but apparently Rana managed to attack the guard and could free himself. Behind that, Duke still continued to be brutal by eliminating one by one the guards who tried to fight him. Back to Rana, he asked Devi to find a safe place, while he himself will fight Roman Ross's right-hand man. So here's Rana in action against Roman Ross's right-hand man. They look same strong, but in the end, the right-hand man chose to escape in order to save the professor. Then Rana went upstairs to look for Roman Ross, because apparently he was there. But upon arrival in the upper room, Rana was successfully injured by a guard who made Rana's shoulder injured. After that came Roman Ross, who immediately pointed his gun. But luckily Duke arrived on time, so the long-awaited duel finally happened. Unfortunately, after just a few punches, Duke had to leave to deactivate a bomb that could destroy the entire room. Meanwhile, the one who replaced the duel was Rana. In the middle of the duel, Rana, who was already badly injured, was cornered by Roman Ross, but suddenly came Devi, who intended to help. But unfortunately, Devi was the one who had to become a victim. Seeing Devi dead, Rana immediately got up and avenged his actions on Devi by slashing Roman Ross's throat. In the end, Roman Ross was successfully eliminated, and the mission was considered complete, even though the professor and the right-hand man had escaped somewhere. Long story short, it shows Rana, who is already in his hometown, Bangladesh. As usual, Rana always visits the graves of his parents as a cure for his missing for them. 6 months later, in one of the dojo in Shanghai, China, then shows two great fighters who are practicing duels using swords. It turned out that in the dojo there was already Paul, the CIA chief, who was watching the two fighters. When he finished training, Paul approached the dojo owner and asked permission to recruit the two fighters. It is known that Paul recruited them to hunt down Richie, Roman Ross's younger brother, who was rumored to be hiding in the Himalayas. It turned out that Richie and the professor who had escaped were continuing to make high-tech weapons that could trigger the Third World War. After recruiting the two fighters, Paul also didn't forget to invite Rana to rejoin. The scene moves to the Himalayan mountains, where Richie, the professor, and the right hand are chatting. While laughing, Richie said that all these games weren't over yet. However, without them realizing it, Rana and the two Chinese fighters were already on top of the mountains while preparing to parachute down to hunt them down. But suddenly, the movie ended.